Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally about to see the light of day, and wow. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of the Snyder Cut, aka Zack Snyder's Justice League, the director's version of the much maligned 2017 flop that was supposed to be the culmination of the DC cinematic universe. I have to admit, when Justice League came out in 2017, if you go on Rotten Tomatoes and look at my review, it's a recommendation, but only because I kind of just threw my hands up in frustration at that point. I really didn't feel like it was worth any kind of discussion, and so I just said, I think the quote is literally, "It's fine, whatever, leave me out of it." It was a movie that I found completely unworthy of any kind of argument because it was a mishmash. There wasn't even enough thought put behind that film for me to categorize it as bad. It just seemed obligatory. Then the news started spreading around, and it was obvious that there was some alternate version, or at least scenes of the film that Zack Snyder had done, because the first trailer for Justice League had almost nothing in common with the final version of the movie. But even the idea of the Snyder Cut, and I said this almost a year ago when this was announced, right after I started this channel, the idea that it would ever be released was impossible to me. And I said this many times over, that the Snyder Cut would never see the light of day because no studio would put the resources and the time and the money behind re-releasing a movie that was a flop. Well, I was capital W wrong on that. The point of this big long run-up is that I want you to know where I'm coming from when I talk about reviewing this movie, because I was very apathetic about the theatrical version of this movie. I was pessimistic about the concept of the Snyder Cut ever being released, and I'll stay on the record. I was not a fan, and am not a huge fan, of Zack Snyder's previous films in the DC cinematic universe. Both Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, neither one of them really did it for me. But when it comes to Zack Snyder's Justice League, I am a fan. This version of Justice League is, in my mind, definitively better than the one that hit theaters back in 2017. It's not just the look and the feel of the film, it's the fact that it actually tells a story. The characters have arcs. The events have reasons behind them. There is a progression to what happens to different people in the film. There is so much more in this movie. The things that Zack Snyder shot for this movie and the things that were cut out of the movie after he left the project are better than what we got in the original version. Yes, it does create a universe that we'll probably never see. If you'd asked me a year ago, I would say we'll never see what Zack Snyder would have done next in this universe. I'm not going to say that again, but I will say it's somewhat likely that we'll never see the movies that we're going to follow from this movie. But this movie really did it for me. And I've seen a lot of people argue already that with this film, well, it's unfair to compare it to the theatrical version because we don't know if this is the version that would have made it to theaters. Well, yeah, of course, this is 4 hours long. There's no way that this is the version that would have made it to theaters, but I'm not going to judge this movie hypothetically on what it might have been had it been released 3.5 years ago. I'm going to judge the movie that we got, and the movie that we got is full of great action sequences, improved takes on all of these characters. The arcs line up. It leaves the characters in better places than the 2017 Justice League did, especially with Aquaman and Flash. This movie sets up Aquaman retroactively now that we've seen his solo movie, and sets up Flash perhaps going ahead to what they're going to do in his movie in such great ways. And it's kind of beyond comprehension to me why they changed some of the things that they changed. So this is a non-spoiler review. I'm not going to go into huge thoughts about everything in the movie because it is very long, it is very dense. I'm going to do a separate spoiler review that's going to come out in a couple days. So without going into details, the first thing that I thought was a massive improvement was Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was a generic cartoon character in the theatrical version of Justice League. Here, you understand, number one, why he's on Earth. You understand, number two, why he's doing what he's doing. And number three, you also understand the consequences of what he's up to. He's not just smushing some cartoon boxes together and going, "Mother," for 2 hours. You actually understand why he's doing what he's doing. It humanizes him. The action sequences are also much better. There are some that are added, but there's one sequence that is abbreviated in the theatrical version that is one of the best realized comic book action sequences that I can think of in any comic book movie. The way that it employs the characters that are in that sequence. When you think about the DC universe, this was the best example of the scope and the size of this universe that I've seen in any DC film. So the action sequences are much improved. A lot of the dumb jokes are gone. There's no Flash jumping into Wonder Woman's boobs. You actually do see the Justice League working together as a team and figuring out how to work together as a team. The color grading is better. That pukey red-orange thing is gone from the end of the movie. And the big third act climax of the movie in general is way better. And Flash in particular, when you look at the version that we got back in 2017, where he's kind of given this side quest to go rescue this family that's hanging out near the abandoned plant and Dostoevsky and all of that stuff, when you see what they do with him and what was originally intended for him in this version, and then you compare it to that, I don't understand. I really don't understand, and I don't think this is revisionist history. I'm not on some quest against Warner or against executives or anything. It's just hard for me to believe that they looked at what they had and they went with the other version, because what they have with Flash in the third act of this movie, this is not me being dramatic. I love it when a movie is able to fully realize the potential of a comic book character. And what you see with Flash in the third act of this film is the first time I've ever seen anyone fully realize that potential. And I literally started to choke up a little bit when I saw how this was actually put to screen. And I just can't believe that they went with the other thing instead of that. Superman also is a character that I think is improved by this version, and it kind of surprised me because my favorite thing about Justice League, the original version, and the thing that I always said was like, well, yeah, Justice League was whatever, but at least it put Superman in a good place, because I loved that version of Superman at the end of the film where he kind of was rejuvenated and had this love and this joy of life, and I was worried that that would be taken away with this film. And it's not really. There's a little bit less of the joking around and the joviality that was brought to him with the reshoots. There's also no cartoon baby face, which is wonderful because that was super creepy. I will give up the things that I liked about Superman in 2017's version for what we get in this movie, because it's also not exactly what a lot of people were thinking. When you look at the black Superman suit, I think there was an assumption that we were going to get a very grim, dark Superman in this movie. That's not the case, and there is some stuff that is really, really cool. I can't wait to talk about it in the spoiler review, because there are a few Superman moments in this movie that are some of my favorite Superman moments of all time. So on balance, I think that Superman is improved by this cut. But the hero that I think I really want to talk about, and then I think most people are going to come out of this movie talking about, is Cyborg. Because Cyborg is the heart and soul of this movie. And every time Zack Snyder's Justice League would cut to another Cyborg scene and it would end, my heart broke just a little bit more for Ray Fisher and for the character to know what they had and to realize what they had cut away. I don't know the actual ins and outs about what went on with Warner Brothers and Ray Fisher. Obviously, it's been a very controversial situation. It's been all over the headlines. But what I will say is when you see what Cyborg's character has in this movie, when it's restored in this cut, the exclusion of it doesn't just seem deliberate, it seems willful. It seems spiteful. It seems like they intentionally wanted to diminish this character and hurt this character in the DC canon, because take away the Zack Snyder version of this movie. The stuff that they excluded makes this 2017 cut less good. It makes the story make less sense. They went out of their way to exclude some of this stuff. They created plot holes by excising the Cyborg stuff instead of trying to restructure the story. Almost everything added with Cyborg made me love that character so much. And I had no feelings about Cyborg. After Justice League, he was a nothing character to me because he was a nothing character in that movie. Now, I want to see more of this character because now I know his backstory, and it's executed so well. It's written so well. It's a heartbreaking story. Not just his backstory, but even events that happened during this movie. It got me on his side so much that now I'm excited about a Cyborg movie at the time when it looks like they might not be making anything else, at least not with Ray Fisher. This confuses me more than anything else because you had a great story, one of my favorite character arc stories for any superhero in any superhero movie, and it was willfully excised from this film for reasons that I just don't understand. It takes humanity and heart out of the movie, and the existence of this cut is worth it just for us to see what Zack Snyder and the creative team behind this film had had in store for the character of Cyborg, because it's really something special, and it is so sad to know that there may be no follow-up on it. A few other things that I really liked about it. Number one, there's more of Jeremy Irons' Alfred. I love that interplay between Bruce Wayne and Alfred, the interplay between Alfred and a bunch of other characters. His character is really beefed up in this movie. The scenes are funny. By the way, there is a lot of humor in this movie. I think a lot of the humor that people assumed Joss Whedon had added was actually present, apparently, through Zack Snyder's material, because some of my favorite jokes, I'd say 90% of them from Justice League, are present in this film. And the movie moves. I mean, it is 4 hours long, but it moves at a pretty quick clip. I've watched 2-hour movies that felt longer than watching all of this film. There's also a completely new score from Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, and I loved the score. You still weave in the superhero scores. You get the Wonder Woman theme here and there. You get some of the Man of Steel theme here and there, but the original score is great. We all know that Junkie XL is a great composer, and nothing against the score that was written for the 2017 version. That wasn't a terrible score either, but it was very Batman-centric. This feels very Justice League-centric. This isn't a perfect movie. I did have some qualms with it. Number one, you can see where there are some compromises in a few different areas, some visual effects shots that look like they weren't quite able to either get all the elements they needed or finish them exactly like they needed to be. Although I will say 97% of the visual effects work in this movie is fantastic. There's just a couple of places where this does look like a bit of a work print. Also with Zack Snyder, and this has been a recurring thing for me, whether I like his movies, whether I don't like his movies, his choice of soundtrack sometimes I think still is very jarring. It doesn't necessarily fit the moment or the emotion of the scene. So there were a couple of scenes that there were some kind of Zack Snyder-y cues, and if you've seen his movies, you know what kind of cues these are. And as I mentioned, the movie does fly by. It's 4 hours long. It's divided up into different parts. There's an epilogue at the end of the film that does wrap up some of the events very nicely, but then there's some other scenes that kind of feel like scraps that were left for setup for movies that it doesn't look like Zack Snyder's going to get to make. Although again, there are a couple of big revelations there that set up some very exciting things down the line that make me wonder what they were thinking. Even if you're going to change anything, why would you leave these things out? So it's not a perfect movie. However, as I was watching the movie unfold, scene after scene came by that was either an improvement on the theatrical version that we already had, or a substitution that was way better than what was reshot and put into the movie, that I honestly left the experience confused as to what any executive at Warner Brothers was thinking when they decided to throw out most of this stuff. Take a scene like the thirsty reporter scene between Martha Kent and Lois Lane. There is an analogous scene to that scene that was the one that Zack Snyder shot in this movie. But when you see what the original scene was, number one, it is so much better on its surface, just better written. You're not undercutting it with a stupid joke. Like, just the dialogue is so much better. It fits those characters so much better. And then when you go out of that scene and you see what the full context of it is absolutely mind-blowing that they didn't go in that direction. I keep using the word willful, but it's almost like Warner Brothers willfully wanted to make this a worse movie, maybe just trying to take a stand. I don't really know what they were thinking with so much of this. I'm not a Snyder defender. I really never have been. It's not in my nature to kind of jump on the bandwagon. I've kind of taken the other side on a lot of these issues, not just with Snyder, but with the DCEU. I've taken my fair share of flack for saying like, well, I know you like this movie, but it's not really my cup of tea. That's what I've been saying about both of Snyder's previous movies in the DCEU, but I really like this movie. Zack Snyder's Justice League is the most successful realization of the vision that Zack Snyder apparently has always had for the DC universe. And I think that it's an example of a studio that chickened out at the wrong time. Because yes, this is not the version that would have hit theaters. And perhaps there would have been a compromised version of what we've seen now on HBO Max that would have been greeted the same way that the version that we got back in 2017 was. But seeing what this raw material is, I don't know how you could get even a cut down version of this movie that was anywhere close to the quality of the 2017 version. And I mean that as a positive to this version. It is a great Justice League movie. It does show you what the team is capable of. It realizes the potential of all of these characters, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it. Yes, it is 4 hours long. It is a big investment of your time, but it is a worthy investment of your time. And it really does prove a lot of people wrong who said that Zack Snyder could never make a great DC film. By the way, I was one of those people. I was wrong about the Snyder Cut never coming out, and I was wrong about the fact that Zack Snyder didn't get these characters or couldn't make a great DC movie. He has made a great DC movie, and you can see it streaming starting tomorrow on HBO Max. So, those are my thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League, aka the Snyder Cut. I am shocked by how much I liked it, but I'm curious to know how much you like it. It drops tonight. Post down below if you're excited to see it, or go back, watch it, come back, tell me what you thought. I think there's going to be a lot of excited people that are going to be watching this movie and talking about it over the next few weeks. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see even more of what I'm up to, you can check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. You can also check out my podcast, All My Movies. We're actually in the middle of Superman month. We've been tracking the cinematic evolution of Superman, including Superman 1978, Superman 2. We cover the Richard Donner cut. We just talked about Superman Returns. And next week, we're going to talk about Man of Steel, which is kind of recontextualized by this whole movie. Also, as I mentioned, stay tuned this weekend because I'm going to be posting a detailed spoiler review. I'm going to go into each part individually, talk about the things that I really liked, a couple things I didn't like, but a lot of things that I really loved. I'm excited for you all to see them and then to come back and have us talk about all of it together. It's an exciting weekend. Tomorrow morning, I will be putting out my review of the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think for once, Marvel's going to be bumped to the back page in the superhero news. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe.